What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Chirp. We are here to bring you stories about lives and relationships being affected by money and loans, how it makes us feel, how it makes us act, and how we all learn to exist in a world where we all financially support one another. We have a great episode for you today. My guest today is Miko James, hailing from San Francisco. Miko is finishing up this year in UC Davis. She's about to start as a product management intern when she finishes. She also has a growing YouTube channel under the name Miko J, where she gives her viewers breakdowns and commentaries on pop culture events and happenings. Very entertaining, very informative. I would highly recommend it. And Miko is also the host of her own podcast, the Black Enterprise Network podcast, where she interviews Black professionals in the tech industry and entrepreneurial roles. As you can imagine, a highly busy individual, but she was generous with her time and information and energy. And I had a wonderful chat with her about her own take on lending, the financial state of being an intern, being a student, in Miko's case both, and what young people on the cusp of going out into the big bad world on their own can do to be smarter about their money. So do stick around until the end to learn about how you can check out Miko's content, where you can find it. And as always, I hope you all enjoy. Let's go. Miko, thank you so much for joining me today in the Chirp. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. How are things?
Yeah, nice to finally meet you too, Cam. Things are going pretty well. Just kind of busy right now.
Brilliant. Yeah, you sounded from doing a bit of research on you're a content creator, YouTuber, podcaster, a student, an intern. So you have a huge amount going on. So let's dive right in. Can you tell me, in a nutshell, if it's possible, a little bit about your journey and how you got into content creation as well?
Yeah, I'll try to summarize it as best as I can. So, currently go to UC Davis. I started in 2016 wanting to be a forensic scientist, so I wanted to major in biological sciences. Didn't like chemistry, so wanted to figure out a different route of making decent income but also being challenged at the same time. So, kind of fell into computer science and that was going on. But, life circumstances happened and I didn't really have the energy to commit to 40 to 60-hour weeks on homework assignments because computer science professors will deal out projects and say, okay, this is what you work on in the real world. What It's not true. You're an
Yeah.
actual software engineer. I mean, you might spend hours or days or weeks on a problem, but it's not as stressful as a school assignment. But yeah, with that, I still continued the route of doing computer science, but in a professional field. So, switched my major to cognitive science, which is just philosophy, psychology, a bunch of other things about the mind with the computer science emphasis. Only have to take 4 classes of computer science and some
Mm.
calculus. And with that, I was able to secure some internships in tech. So, I entered at Slack twice as a software engineering intern, both as front end and back end. Again, just coding in general takes they always say it takes a specific kind of person. That doesn't mean you have to be super smart or like Mark Zuckerberg level or whatever. It just means you have to really enjoy solving puzzles and not being frustrated.
Yeah.
And for me, I don't know. I was just annoyed of every time I fix something, something else breaks. The second I fix that, there's something else that needs to be done and always testing the code after. It's not like when you make a project, you can be done. It can look ugly as hell, and you do that. But industry level, it was just kind of very dull and
Overwhelming.
boring, and yeah, very overwhelming if you don't really care for code. Which I know I didn't, but yeah, doing
Mm.
2 internships really honed that in. So with that, transitioned into product management, not because it's something I actually wanted to do, but that's because I sometimes I blindly listen to people and they say that product management is the easiest transition from engineering. And I'm like, okay, sure. But this field is well, it's like a I would say it's a bit more competitive because I'm sure you might know, there's always gonna be hundreds of roles for engineering. You need to have the person build the thing. As long as you pass the interviews, you're fine, but product management, you're gonna be competing with thousands of applicants for 1 to 2 spots for the most part, and if you're lucky, some companies will have, like, 5 to 10 spots, if that, and even then, it's even more competitive, so I feel like I kind of lucked out getting my first internship at WePay
Mm.
last summer. Not the best company, still grateful though. And yeah, interviewed over the last couple of months since January, and I'll be in New York for Datadog, uh, doing product management. So that's the school to career progression.
Cool.
As far as content goes, it kind of just happened.
Some of your
Like,
first YouTube well, they were
yeah.
shorts, but you were kind of documenting your
Mhm.
new internship as well, which was cool. So it kind of transitioned nicely, I thought.
I wasn't really documenting it. I think I was just trying to create a tech channel to be helpful to people because
Hmm.
everyone's always going to be looking, how do I get into tech? How do I learn how to do coding interviews, stuff like that. So with the YouTube channel, it's mainly just starting with what do I know, like any channel, and what can I share. But again, I just don't care for I
Yeah.
guess creating content about something I'm working in. Some people can, but I just like talking about stuff I'm passionate about.
Fantastic. And you know yourself, what do you think are some of the major financial drawbacks of being a student, being an intern, being kind of the age that you are before you really go out into full-time employment and you're totally on your own? What have you any kind of examples that have affected you in terms of being in that position?
Yeah, 100%. Like, there a lot of professionals tell you this, and I agree to an extent that being a student, it's a pretty big advantage of like you have, aside from homework, you have very limited responsibilities. You can start a startup, you can start a side hustle, YouTube channel, whatever, and you have extra free time. But at the same time, your income is so inconsistent, it can be frustrating. Because right
Hmm.
now, my issue with being a student is I want to have money to outsource. Like I don't enjoy editing every single week. Like I want to be to the point where I only have to do it once or twice a month for 2 videos, but doing it every week and having to edit my podcast episode every single time, it's you can't do that as a student. You have to, be little frugal and
Yeah.
between groceries, if you have food stamps, that helps a bit, and then rent, and then other external bills, and then just taking care of yourself too. So it's that balance of I want to spend so much on my business side hustle, but I can't because my income is not consistent enough. And the thing about doing internships, even if it's in tech, you can make up to $30,000 for 3 months, which is great, but it doesn't last forever. That money goes away really quickly, which is what I've learned interning the last couple of years. So I think that's the biggest drawback if you're someone like me that wants to have a side hustle and be a student. But if you're
Hmm.
just being a student, you're chilling.
And in general, kind of throughout your life, Miko, have you had any of your relationships be affected by money or loans? Because we're very interested in hearing stories like that from our guests.
100%. Mine might not be, like, in my 20s, but it'll be when I'm younger.
Mm,
Just go along with it. So, when I
I'm
was
listening.
younger, I would get a ton of money for doing chores, like, making maybe 60 to $100 a week from when I was aged 8 or something around there, up until middle
Hmm.
school and high school where, chores kinda end when I get my first job in high school, but that's entirely different. So I'd have a ton of money saved up. I'd have my mom store some of it. I'd store some of it myself. But the thing is that when you have siblings, like older siblings that don't entirely have themselves together, it can be a bit frustrating, I
Hmm.
guess, to say, "Oh, can I just borrow $20?" And I never saw that $20 again. And that would be so consistent, even with my mom just telling the siblings to just kind of back off a bit. But I'm always so willing to give that after a while, I think took me to being 13, 14 years old where I finally put a stop to that of years of letting them borrow money. It was just it became way too much. So now as an adult, I barely let anybody borrow money from me. It's just that not a fear, but just a thing of, "Oh, I won't get it back." And now that I'm adult, I have more money. If I let you borrow like 100 or like $1,000, am I ever gonna see that money again? So
Yeah.
yeah,
And does
that's
that
that's
st-
kind of how that started.
Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that we, always talk about on the show and hear lots is kind of, family values and where they've been rooted from and kind of things that have come from, early family life and that are existent today in people's money management. And the one thing I really like to listen to is, you know, does a guest come from a family where, lending is encouraged, or, lending is allowed, and generosity is existing as well. So is it kind of safe to say in your position you were overly generous, and there was kind of a borrowing nature within your family, but it didn't really work out for you, and that's kind of, as an adult today, it's kind of made you a little bit wiser.
I'll have a different take on this. So for me now, I feel like seeing how my siblings have consistently borrowed from my parents and other people without really consistently paying them back, I felt like
Yeah.
I had to kind of be the person to never borrow money. I suppose I was just like, you know what? I'm just gonna take care of myself. I don't need anything from anybody. I think I'm doing pretty okay between these internships, tax returns, and part-time job on campus. I'm doing okay, and I think it's kind of been a hindrance because I can be honest about it now. I don't feel as bad about it, but the last couple of weeks, I've asked my mom if I could borrow money from her so I could just get this business thing going with between YouTube and the podcast. Because,
Yeah.
as you know, equipment, software, outsourcing, it
Subscriptions.
adds up. Subscriptions, it adds up a
Hmm.
lot. Because in summary, I can't do everything. Like I was designing my thumbnails and stuff, but I noticed they suck. My quality sucks. So that means going to a freelancer and paying them, about $50 a thumbnail, which, it sounds cheap, but it adds up. Got money to pay my friend to start editing my videos in the upcoming weeks, because again, it's burnout is really a thing between school and wanting to be a side hustle person. So for me, it sounds simple, but just getting the courage to borrow money from my mom and then just ensuring her, like, I'm gonna have a full-time job next year. I will pay you back by then. But just that eternal thing of feeling like I will never be able to pay them back, like
Yeah,
my
the
siblings have in
guilt.
the past. So
Hmm.
just that kind of feeling, but it's weird to borrow money if you've never done it. Like, this is my first time ever doing it in my 24 years of life.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic. Well, I'm sure she has all the faith in the world in you and your future. Back to, hashtag intern life. What is kind of some of the advice that you can give other interns to keep, somewhat financially stable? I myself was an intern at 28 in a recording studio. Um, Family was hugely important. I worked in sales, tech sales as well. It can pay quite well. It's a hard thing to walk away from, but it wasn't for me. It wasn't my passion. Doing this kind of stuff is.
Mhm.
So taking an unpaid internship was quite difficult for me, but obviously family was a big one in terms of keeping myself afloat. Is it the same for you, or kind of what advice would you give to other interns who are maybe worried about taking the plunge?
Yeah, I mean, you guys are probably gonna hear this a lot from older people too, but just save your money the best you can.
Hmm.
Because, like, with Slack, I feel like the first time I did okay-ish. Like, of course, you hit those checks hit the first time. The mall is right down the street in San Francisco. You kinda
Spend, spend, spend.
a little bit. You get a little bit
Yeah.
tempted to buy an
Mm.
outfit and stuff like that. But at the same time, I was putting away, I think, a few $1,000s at a time every month into my savings account for, like, emergency funding, which thankfully I did have some emergencies come up, so that money came in handy. But whether you're making $2,000 a month or $5,000 a month, just find ways to save as much as you can, especially if you're not guaranteed to have a full-time offer by the end of your internship. Even if you think you're doing a great job, you never know what can happen. So try not to splurge too much, save as much as you can. And when you get a full-time offer, then you can kind of go a little ham because then you make a full salary. So that's kind of what I would say in regards to saving
You
and
can
money.
breathe a little sigh of
Yeah, you
relief.
can you can breathe a little bit.
Yeah, fantastic. And one of your videos as well that I really enjoyed, I watched about 10 of them. One of them that I enjoyed was your, you were kind of talking about passive income courses and things like that.
Yeah.
Do you think that students are kind of falling prey to these kind of not get rich quick schemes, but these passive income models that can guarantee you a steady stream of passive income. Do you, in your experience, have you seen any of your peers falling victim to that and losing money or investing money and not getting it back?
I haven't seen anyone I know of that's fallen prey to it, but I know it's a thing, which is why research is very important when it comes to
Mm,
online courses. Actually, I have fallen victim to it, actually. Me. So basically, again, with the pandemic happening, I really wanted to kickstart writing and blogging, which at the time I didn't know blogging was dead. But the
mm,
way these people marketed it, they're like, blogging's alive. You can easily make six figures on it like we have. And the course in general is self-paced, do it yourself, have a specific niche, etc. But what I noticed after like the first few lessons and then being a part of their Facebook group, with which they didn't answer any of the questions, by the way, they just had a random admin in there. I was like, oh
mm.
my god, I got scammed. I got duped. And it all
Yeah.
started with a YouTube video. It started with make something how you can make six figures on a blog today or this year in 2020, and they had like a million views on it, so I thought it was legitimate, and to an extent it is, but blogging's dead. Like, blogging is not a thing anymore, and when you're new to the world of content creation, yeah, you can fall prey to that, and unfortunately waste a ton of money on courses like I did, which is why, going back to my point of research, try to find YouTube video reviews on the course and see what people say. Try to find online communities, do some Reddit searches, and see what people say. Because I think what's benefited me the most of the courses that have been worth it, like Part Time YouTuber Academy, is that it's active, it's alive. There's tons of good content out there. There's tons of people that have proof of success,
Yeah.
not just the actual creator of the course. Of course, the creator of the course is going to say, we made six figures. And they had, of course, a little testimonials, but it just didn't seem as legitimate. Versus P2IA, there's tons of videos about P2IA and people sharing their feedback and opinions. Not always worth it for some people, but for other people, active community, actual admins that are YouTubers doing this actively and have grown, and there's proof. So do your research before you pay a few $100s on a course, and you should be fine.
And with kind of the YouTube channel as well,
Mhm.
and that's kind of blossomed into something kind of more. And then you obviously have your podcast, the Black Enterprise Network. How did the podcast kind of come to fruition, and why did you kind of come up with this idea? What was kind of the thought process behind that?
Yeah, it was something I was thinking about. Like when I interned at Slack in person in 2019, it was a building of at least, it's way bigger now since being acquired by Salesforce, but at the time it was like 1,000 people in the building with 10 floors. And you would think that's a lot of people, which it is, but at the time, every single floor I went on, there was always someone that looked like me, someone that was black, and it was just kind of cool to see because that's not common in tech, especially in the Bay Area. Like the
Mm,
percentages are very low. It's like usually less than 10%, less than 5%, depending on the company. So for me to have a black manager and her manager to be black as well, that doesn't happen. And it was really cool to just go to these networking events and meet other black entrepreneurs and see what they were doing. And I was like, wow, I know so many great people. Maybe I should do something about it. And I didn't until 2020 when the pandemic happened where everyone has this quote unquote free time to explore stuff. Everything was like way more locked down in 2020. You couldn't even go to the grocery store. If that, you couldn't go to the library, couldn't go to class, couldn't
horrible.
do anything.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know what, when my mental state was still pretty fresh, I was like, let me start this podcast. I mean, no one has anything else to do. These professionals are caged in as much as I am. It's a good time to share their stories, share inspiration, because a lot of black students or black people you meet, they don't think it's possible to get into tech because again, there's like this preconceived notion that you need to be super genius, which you don't. You just need common sense and to study. But
I worked in
yeah,
tech sales. You definitely don't need to be a genius
no,
if that's the route you want to go.
there's quite a lot of dumb people in tech, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I just wanted to inspire some other people in my community.
And just going back as well, because the story of you, plucking up the courage to ask your mom for a loan and it not
Mm.
being, very you. and not something that you're comfortable with. I'm kind of curious to know what was her reaction, because at a guess, I would assume that your mother would be like, "Yeah, of course, that this isn't a regular occurrence. This isn't something that happens all the time, and I have to worry about. And you have a very bright future." What was her kind of reaction when you did ask her for that loan?
Yeah, her reaction was very positive. Like she understands what I'm trying to do with this content thing. Thankfully, not all parents are understanding of that.
Yeah,
And I was just explaining to her for months on end of like, okay, with my money here from the internship, I'm going to do this, this, this. I've already kicked off this. I've done this with this guest. I've done this video. Like she gets it, and she understands that I really just want to. I have to pay certain services and people to get things done quickly and efficiently, and so that I don't burn out.
yeah.
And she, just very supportive parent that just wants the best for me. So she was totally fine with it. She knows I'll pay it back once I get a full-time job next year. I think it was just me kind of freaking out about it as someone that's never done this and just saying, "Oh, I'm so sorry. I don't usually do this." And,
Yeah.
just her reassuring me it's fine. So,
Brilliant. And that, that this future you speak of, the channels are growing, the content is flowing. That rhymed. That was pretty cool. But in terms of kind of your future, your financial future, you're in the last, you're in the home run of your academic life. What are your kind of plans financially, work wise, but also professionally with the content creation?
yeah, yeah, like I'm counting down the days till I can get a final internship next summer because this summer didn't work out, unfortunately, and get a full time job after that because full time
Hmm.
interviews are crazy. They're insane. So once that is secured, just the basics of paying off student loans, credit card debts, get that out the way. And then, yeah, work remotely in California. I still love California. Only people from California want to live in California, but want to stay close to home. That'll probably be the most expensive part. But yeah, just going to plan out how and where I want to live, be cost efficient. I'm gonna be a late bloomer for driving, but that's totally fine. When you live in the city, you just take BART, transit, bus, whatever. I'm cool with it.
Hmm.
And yeah, just I think when you're depending on what you do, when it comes to being a creator, I feel like it's easy to do that on the side when you have a full time job versus being a startup founder on the side and having a full time
Yeah.
job.
Hmm.
Because again, outsourcing people don't wanna hand off their work, but you are just gonna burn out after a while. I've been doing this for, like, a year for YouTube and then basically 2 years for the podcast, and I'm ready to just hand it off. But it requires money, and thankfully with tech jobs, they pay pretty well. So, working remotely, outsourcing a dedicated few thousand dollars to team members that will skyrocket the business. That'll help me accelerate because right now I feel like I'm going slower than I'd like to, but I'm
Well,
excited.
you're
Like
very busy.
I'm
You're very
excited.
busy.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
busy. Because
Yeah.
then it'll just be job, content creator. Right now it's student, intern, content creator kind of job.
Do you think that, you'd like to do the content creation full time? Is that kind of your main passion, or are you looking to focus on something else?
It's definitely a goal. It's as you know, it just takes a bit of time. It can
Hmm.
take between anywhere between 2 to 5 years, give or take. It'll just depend on how things go for me this year. Like, if I'm able to be monetized by the summer, that'll accelerate, and by monetize on YouTube, I mean 1,000 subscribers, 4,000 hours watch time, which I believe is doable with the pace I'm on right now, but
Good.
there are people with 10,000 subscribers that can make 6 figures. You don't need 100,000 or 500,000 or a million to be full-time. I just wanna make sure that my debts are paid off, I have a ton of money saved up, I've got some stability, and I kinda wanna do the thing that most full-time creators do, of, like, when you have your job and you have your side hustle, does your side hustle make as much as your job, if not more? So, I'm probably gonna lean that way to where I start making 6 figures from content, then that's it, I quit. I quit my
Yeah,
job,
yeah, yeah.
so that's what I wanna
Brilliant.
do.
And just, I'd love to get your kind of thoughts on debt, student debt,
Mhm.
because I'm from Ireland, from Europe. It's not really a huge worry for students where I grew up. I know that it is quite a concern for American students. What are your kind of feelings on it? Do you feel that it's a it's something that's going to haunt you for a while? Do you think that you've got it under control? What are your emotions about it?
Yeah, I would say I've got it under control. I mean, again, I can say not everyone's in the same position. Though when you're in tech, that student loan debt stress isn't as terrible.
Yeah, of course.
Because with how much you make and depending on your debts, you get paid off in like a few years. And for me, I'll probably be able to pay it off in like 1 to 2 years because I don't have that much. I have about maybe 10,000 or less, give or take.
Mm,
So I'm not too stressed out about it. I think just in the moment of having to take the loan out, it's kind of like how I had to borrow money from my mom. I was just freaking out because I had never done it
yeah,
before.
yeah.
But yeah, it's just trying to not forget about the loans, but just know where you're going and that they'll be taken care of eventually.
Brilliant, Miko. So if people want to watch your YouTube channel, listen to your podcast, read your blogs or your articles, I should say, what are all of your handles? Where can people find you?
Yeah, I need to set up a link tree. My current thing isn't the best. So for YouTube, it's just Miko, Miko space J. It'll be like a cartoonish thing of me with headphones. And for the podcast, blackenterprisenetwork.fm. And for socials, if you just go to the YouTube channel,
They all
yeah,
intertwine.
they're all intertwined. You could just go
Yeah.
on my LinkedIn and find everything there. It's my full name, Kimiko, Kimmiko, space James. So yeah.
Brilliant. Miko, such a pleasure talking to you. I was a fan all day watching your videos, and to actually have a chat with you, it's great to kind of hear your story and your take on things of your financial debt and how you're handling things, and clearly the bright future that you have. So thank you so much for coming on the Chirp today.
Yeah, thanks.
First and foremost, I find it most impressive that you can be finishing up a bachelor's degree, on the hunt for a full-time job, hosting a podcast and running a YouTube channel all at the same time. So kudos to Miko for her commitment and for all her roles that she has. And the more I spoke to Miko, the more excited I became about her future, kind of like a character in a gripping TV series. I'm seriously keen to find out where her journey will take her. I asked her about what she would ideally like to focus on job-wise, and I was delighted to hear that the content route is one that would be ideal for her, because I think she'd do such a great job. I also liked how reserved she was about lending. She is tentative to lend money to her peers, as her siblings in the past have shown her how lending can maybe be done wrong, not in the best way, and she knows that sometimes it can lead to a bad situation, i.e. not getting your money back. And yet, even though she wasn't comfortable with it, even though it stands against what she believes in, Miko did ask her mother for a loan to help with her blossoming content creation campaign, to ease the workload of creating content, and being able to delegate to other professionals is a very wise move, but one that isn't cheap. And Miko recognized that sometimes it's totally cool to ask for help, especially from those who support you and support your dreams and your goals as well. From our brief conversation, Miko seemed like a very sensible human being and really emulated the ideal lender for me. She's wary of her borrowers, she understands those who she should lend to and those who she shouldn't, and knowing when the time is right also to ask for help herself. So thank you all again for joining us today. Be sure to check out Miko on her YouTube channel, her podcast, Black Enterprise Network, and do give her some love. We'll be back in 2 weeks with another episode. We are slowly gaining on our 20 episode milestone this summer, which is pretty cool. And we will continue to bring you some interesting stories about loans and lenders moving forward. So stay safe, everyone. I will see you all very soon. Take care.